Today we have to cut these goats' hooves. I'm going to walk you through the process. It has to be done anyway. Some of you have asked in the comments and I'm really excited to show it. There's a few things that we should know beforehand. It's really important that you use shears. For one, here are the shears that I use. I will put a link to them down in the comments and they're very sharp. So part of that means that we have to be very careful in where we are directing them toward the animal. I'll show you a little bit more as we're going through it, but we really want to make sure that the sharp end isn't somewhere facing the animal so that they can get cut. Also, there are times when the animal moves their hooves. You can get yourself in the eye if you're too close or if you're being too careful. I mean, not too careful, but if you're being too meticulous. So be careful at where you're pointing these things. Now, number two, it's not the most necessary thing in the entire world, but you should be cleaning these between your goats, because if one has a bacteria or something, for some reason, you can transfer that from one goat to the other. This should be a short video. We're just going to go in, show the basics of trimming, and that you could do it. It's not bad. You should be doing it absolutely, because if not, the goat's hooves can get too long and they could become lying. I'll show that a little bit more in the video, but here we go. Oh, and I forgot to mention, make sure you're doing this in some sort of headlock, stanchion, some sort of thing to keep your goats in, especially if you're not the biggest and the strongest and your goats are bigger. You can lock their heads in between your knees and do it, but the best and easiest way to do it is have some sort of goat headlock system called a stanchion where you can do your milking at. A lot of you who have goats probably are doing it for milking. If not, just for general maintenance, anything that you need to do with your goats, it's a lot easier doing it with a stanchion. Sorry, let's get back into the video. Okay, now that she's set up, we want to pick up her back leg by the ankle right here where it bends. Lift up like this, and then we have her in a good lock right here. On this foot, we've got the heel, the growing ring on the outside, the sole, the toes, the inner hoof wall inside of here, and the outer hoof wall, which is right here. The outer hoof wall and the inner hoof wall are what tend to grow the most, and that is right along this one. As I get a different goat, I'll show you a little bit more. I'm going to kind of scrape out some of this dirt that's on here. It's this inner and outer wall that you'll see a lot of growth from, right around here. So the first thing that we're going to do is just make sure that this is flush with the actual sole. Carefully clipping along, keeping it flat, just making that flat here. Honestly, this is pretty easy. We're going to do it on both feet. Now what will happen a lot, especially if you have rocks on your property, those inner and outer walls can kind of come together and rocks can get stuck in between there, and we really got to make sure that those are out. But this toe portion is actually the scariest if you've never done it before, and you can just trim straight off. And it will feel gushy because there's nothing in there. And then I'll start to reveal that toe clip on the end, and then I like to straighten this out a little bit. I said toe clip, but I mean like the fleshiness of the actual hoof, not anything past that. If you go too far, you'll start to see blood coming through here. It's okay, just a little bit. It's almost like trimming a dog's foot too much, a dog's toe too much, where it will bleed a little bit, but it's going to bleed less than a dog even. And look right here, we're going to do the same thing on this one. Start trimming here. And I don't see the white flesh yet. So we're just going to slowly trim very carefully forward. There we are. And I don't want to go much more than this one, just in case. And make sure that those side walls, which you see right here, now I want to make sure that this is fully cleaned too. There, and that was the first one. Now we can see with the second one, it's much worse. The side walls are growing a lot further over. So I'm going to first trim those side walls. And then the toe front. Carefully, carefully, slightly removing one little bit at a time. There we are. I'm not going to go too much there. There's a little bit more of these sidewalls that need to go on this one. And then here, this, you can see how twisted this tip is in comparison to the one that I just cut. This definitely is curving, and she's not going to like to walk very much like that. So let's just start trimming that off. And then trim this. This is that sidewall again. And then you can, if the heel isn't very good, you can get a little bit of the heel. Just a little bit, just to make it flush, so that she has an even spot to walk on. And now these front ones are a little bit easier to grab because I grab underneath. Her head is in this direction. I'll grab with my palm right here and just pull back. She doesn't move a lot, but there's a big thing that we got to be aware of in case she kicks or moves her foot suddenly. When we're cutting here, let me turn this around. It could go right into her body. I'll show you a little bit better this way. As we're cutting here, it can go right into her body. So when we're cutting, we really got to be careful that the tip isn't, for some reason, going to jab her at her own sudden movements, not from us, but from her. So when we're doing it, we take it out a little bit, and we're very careful here, cutting pretty far away from her body, and being aware of ourselves, our hands, and her. Kind of doing the same thing that we just did before, cutting those sidewalls. And sometimes inside of those sidewalls, you'll see that there is junk that got stuck in there, mud or anything. You want to get that out so that it can come and grow back normally. So you see that gap that was here? There's nothing wrong with that, but we want to get everything out of there. I can even kind of trim around that just in case. Encourage growth back there. One thing that goats can get in their hooves from not trimming or being too dirty or wet is called thrush. And thrush is like a bacteria that is going to get in their hooves and can start rotting part of their hoof away. It's treatable, but you don't want them to go through that. So this is why we will need to do this frequently. For one, it keeps them comfortable, and two, keeps them safe. Now here we have a lot of sidewall here growing up on both sides. We just need to cut this off, keeping it flush. Trim that front away. Now this back one over here, I'm gonna have to reach from underneath because my stanchion is against the wall. And then once you're comfortable, you can carefully reach from underneath. I still am very mindful of where my shears are. They're kind of facing down and away from her body, just in case of any sudden movements. Occasionally I have to go against that rule, just to be extra careful, but I just have to be extra careful. Trim away this hoof, and I can see another spot right here in this side wall where there, trim that away. That should grow back perfectly fine now. There. There we are, she's done for now. We're gonna switch goats. I'm gonna try to give you an even closer look at what it is now that I don't have to show you kind of how to watch out for the body. This other goat is a little bit bigger and we should be able to see her hooves a little bit more. All right, this goat is bigger and stronger, but we're gonna try to get a better look, closer look at this whole thing. So we can actually see the side wall right here, where this side wall needs to come off. And then the sidewall from here. Front toe. This one's actually not too bad. We're gonna trim this front toe right here. There it is. Level it out. Same thing with this side. Because these grow very long sometimes and they curve into each other. Just making sure this sidewall is trimmed back because those grow over the toes like I showed before, like this. And they curve over each other, blocking the sole of the foot. And then this foot. This is a good foot for you to see. Here we are. Sidewalls. These sidewalls are the most important because this is where stuff like thrush or bacteria can start to set in because that's where all the mud and gunk gets stuck into. And I'm just going to use the tip of these carefully to scrape some of that out. And then I'll come back, cut that sidewall away so we can make sure, like this one right here, this one is looking not the best. It's coming into the actual sole. Right there. You can see that dark spot. So this is a place that I need to watch out for. Just going to try to cut away some of that sidewall. There. That it is getting decently cleaned so that it doesn't come into further problems. There we are. But I also don't want to go too deep that it causes any issues of pain or bleeding. They are pretty thick here on the soles of their feet, but you still can go too far. There, most of this dirt is out. All right, now the other foot, the other toe rather. Trim up. Yeah, that was pretty easy. Flatten that toe out so as she's stepping it rolls and it doesn't just kind of have a weird fall off, so that is easier. Now while I'm trimming this other one, I want to tell you why this is so important to do. Okay, look, this one's pretty bad when it comes to the sidewalls curving over the toe. You may be able to see that. And what we're going to do is just cut this off. And then we're going to go back into telling you the story. So one of the reasons why this is crucial to do is because if those, especially those front toes, get too long, the goat will start to become lame in the front end, and they'll start walking around on their front knees, and it's just really not good for them. So to be on top of it and have your goats in a position that you're able to trim frequently isn't just going to give them more comfort, it's also better for them in general, just for everything they do. There we go. And now we've got the youngest member of our crew who is not the best at this yet. And you see how much more she's fighting me? So I just have to be way more careful now. Same thing for every size goat. And if they're, I'm going to show you this again, if they're curved like this, if you're curving that back foot, they can't move it very well. We did it. Okay, she's done. All right, let's get her off, but we're done. We're done cutting them, and oh, give me a second, I'll talk to you. And that's it. It's a really simple process. The more you do it, the easier it gets, the better you get at it. So don't be afraid. You don't have to pay somebody to do this. This can be on your own. And before we go, check out some of my other videos. I have talked a little bit about why I think for most people, not all, but for most people, goats are probably the better option for bringing milk onto your homestead. Now, not always. I have a cow, and I think the cow is the way to go for us. We made that decision, but it's not for everybody. We have enough land and a few other things. Go check out that video if you're at all curious on why we came to that conclusion. We've got more videos to post. It's not always how-tos. It's also just life on the homestead, things that I have to share, things that are my thoughts. So give it a like and a follow. Share this video with your friends, your family, or even your chickens. But until then, see you next time.